The following program is a production of Hōʻike Kauaʻi Community Media. Island Alert was made possible in part by the Kauaʻi Island Utility Cooperative.
Aloha and welcome to Island Alert. It's the show where we get to know Kauai's first responders. I'm Max Richardson.
Hi, thank you, Max. I'm Mike Gibson, Fire Chief of the County of Kauaʻi Fire Department.
And today's episode is all about the Kauaʻi Fire Department. Chief, thanks so much for coming on the show. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? How long have you been Fire Chief here in Kauaʻi?
Sure, Max. Thank you. I've been Fire Chief for the last 2.5 years, since June of 2022. I've been with the Fire Department since 2020. I moved to the island in 2017. I retired as a battalion chief with the City of Henderson, Nevada Fire Department. I served there for 28 years. I grew up in Southern California, which is going to tell you why I became a firefighter. My dad served for 37 years for the County of Los Angeles Fire Department. So it was a life that I grew up with. It was a service that I felt compelled to give, as I saw that from my dad. So at the age of 24, I moved from Southern California, accepted a job with the City of Henderson, Nevada, and worked happily there until my wife and I decided we wanted to move to the islands before we got too old. And we have loved it here and still love it ever since.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, and we're glad to have you. I'm actually from California too, so it made sense to me right away when you said, that, you wanted to be a firefighter, being from California, because that place is on fire all the time. My dad was actually a reserve firefighter too, so something we have in common. So, did you always want to be a firefighter? I guess, since you're. Oh,
I did. As a child, the career really appealed to me. As I became a teenager, I started taking, there's Fire Department Explorers, kind of an outreach for younger youth. We eventually would like to have something like that here. We don't, but I was able to at a young age. It's similar to Boy Scouts, where you attend weekly meetings, you get to learn some of the skills of a firefighter. But what you're really picking up is that the desire to serve others and to see what your willingness to be a part of the community, how it can make a difference, and the looks on people's faces when you're helping them at their time of need, when you can accept whatever condition there is that they are in, no matter how sick they are. We're here and we're there to treat them as a family member and show that care and love and respect.
Yeah, nothing quite like that feeling. All right. Well, we're so glad to have you here on the show and here on the island of Kauaʻi. Interestingly, on our last episode, we interviewed Chief Raybuck, who also moved over from Nevada. So what a small world. What are the biggest fire safety challenges, in your opinion, on Kauaʻi, and how is your fire department addressing them?
Okay. Well, I'm going to jump right into the biggest threat that we all have an awareness of is the threat of wildfires. We have seen, in the fire service, we have seen this for decades. And then most recently in Northern California, Oregon, Colorado, they've been having these strong wind-fueled fires that can take over a city and cause evacuations of tens of thousands of people. We have been able to be warned of these effects through severe fire warnings, fire conditions, red flag warnings, where we know that the high winds are going to dry out the fuels even faster. And if there is an ignition source, now all these fires do need to be started somehow. They don't just start on their own. But we understand how susceptible we are to the fire. Some of the things that our fire department is doing to prepare for this, mitigation efforts with our large landowners, the state, our own county public works, to cut fire breaks. We have a code that we enforce. There has to be at least 30 foot and even up to 100 foot in some situations of brush clearance from any structure. In addition to that, we want access for our fire engines. We need to be able to get to where the fires are. We, in times of red flag warnings or fire alert, severe fire conditions, we have a severity staffing guide that we implement in our department. We add additional firefighters to the fire stations. We staff our water tender, which isn't typically staffed, so that it's available to respond to these wildfires.
Cool. All right. Yeah, it sounds like you guys are taking a very proactive approach. What should the average resident know about fire prevention in their homes, especially given the unique environment we have here in Kauaʻi?
So starting with inside the home, we always stress cooking safety, not leaving stoves on, cooking on top of the stove unattended, always be in and around when the flame is on. Electrical safety, if you're going to have repairs or additions made to your home, to use a licensed contractor, licensed electricians. Outside of the home, for our fire awareness, we have information available on our website and also the NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association, of creating a defensible space around your house and hardening your home. And what that means, how I talked earlier about, we want the large landowners to create a buffer zone of the dry brush from a structure. For each resident around their own house, we want them to keep clear any debris, any leaves, pine needles, stuff that can accumulate on the roof. These small things around the home in the times of a large fire and there are wind-driven embers that are flying through the air, it'll catch on to these debris around your home. So if you have a pile of brush or a pile of leaves on the side of your house, or if they've accumulated on the roof, the embers are going to make their way into these dried brush and leaves, and that's what will start your home on fire.
It's like kindling for a campfire.
It's exactly what that is.
And if you can give me those links that you mentioned later, I'll throw them up on screen and I'll put them down in the show notes if you're listening to this as a podcast, so people can go and check those things out, because those are useful tips I think not a lot of people know about. So what would you say are the most common types of calls that the department responds to, and how can we as average citizens help prevent these emergencies?
The highest number of calls are emergency medical service related. So everything from a heart attack to a diabetic with low blood sugar to a fall in the house, motor vehicle accidents that have injuries. The second to that are rescues involving injured or lost hikers, swimmers that become overtaken in the water. And for these, we recommend, especially for the hikers and the swimmers, knowing the area that you're going to go into. So if it's hiking, stay on a marked trail, let others know your plans, when you're expected to come back, that you take plenty of water with you, food if you expect to be out there extended hours, that you know your limits is a big one for us. So you've got all it takes to make the 11-mile hike, but you get there and now you're out of energy, and what are you going to do? How are you going to get back? So we want you to know your limits. If you can only hike 11 miles, hike 4 or hike 5, spend some time and then come back. We want you to be able to come back. And for swimmers, it's learning the ocean conditions, and they can do that by checking in with one of our 12 lifeguarded beaches. Check in with the lifeguards. They can tell you the conditions, where you can swim and where you shouldn't swim. And those can change daily. So we always ask for the swimmers, locals, and visitors to check in with our lifeguards.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that I've personally seen a lot, is a lot of people who have grown up swimming in lakes and rivers and swimming pools, they don't know how to read the ocean, and they're doing stuff that anyone that can read the ocean is looking at them like, what is this guy doing?
Yep, I was one of those people.
Were you?
Uh-huh.
But yeah, those are all good tips, and hopefully some people will hear this and pay attention to those, because those just following that simple advice could save lives. So we talked about wildfires already a little bit. They're becoming a bigger and bigger concern. They're becoming more and more common. What proactive steps do you guys take, aside from maybe what we've already mentioned, to prevent wildfires?
And the prevention is education and awareness. There are organizations out there that can provide this help. One of a great partner that we have in our state and on the island here is the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. They have been around for up to 2 decades. They're involved at the national and the federal level. They help large landowners and communities secure federal grants to help with fire mitigation and clearing of brush. They offer educational programs, but better than that, they're a great partner. They can help what's known as establish a fire-wise community. A fire-wise community, we don't have one here yet on our island, but it's a neighborhood comprised of individuals that are all of them are willing to do what I talked about earlier about creating a preventable, defensible boundary around their home. I'm struggling to put 4 acronyms together at once, but what they'll do, we get 1 or 2 homeowners that are interested in being the steward for their neighborhood. So they'll start with their yard. They'll help with their neighbor's yard. They'll help with that whole street, and then the next street I'm following. And eventually that entire community becomes a fire-wise community. And that fire-wise community through the NFPA is eligible to receive grant money to do community cleanups and so forth.
Cool, all right. So it's interesting that you mentioned previously all the most common calls that you guys go out on seem to not have much to do with fire. You have a lot of search and rescue situations and home rescue situations. How does your, because I know there are other, like EMS calls, for example, right? We have AMR on island, and we've got civilian agencies like KSAR. How does your organization interface with those organizations in those types of situations?
So in addition to fire, and we do run a substantial amount of structure fires, brush fires, vehicle fires, along with that, the great number of EMS calls with our partners at American Medical Response. We rely on them for the advanced life support. So on our fire department, although we do train our incoming firefighter recruits as emergency medical technicians at an intermediate level, they are nationally certified, but the paramedics here offer advanced life support through AMR, and so we rely on them. Other partners like KSAR, Kauaʻi Search and Rescue, that organization, we do a lot of training with them, not only just at the boots on the ground level, doing rope drills and search drills, but they're partners with us on the strategic level as well. So we work with them in KEMA, the Kauaʻi Emergency Management Organization, who I cannot understate or overstate how important they are on our island. They have led us through many disasters, and because they have gotten so good at establishing the relationships necessary to quickly organize support and assets for our island, we're able to, on a frequent basis, interact with KSAR. And so when there is an incident, we already have our established relationships. We know who's going to show up on scene. We know what their capabilities are. We know what their skills are. And so we don't have to start from scratch every time. We're able to pick up from where we left off on either our last training or our last incident.
Cool. All right. Yeah, that sounds like, how do I put it? Sounds like you guys gel really well together, which is nice to hear, because yeah, anytime you have interagency cooperation, it can always get a little sticky. So okay, I know the Ocean Safety Bureau, or OSB, is a part of the fire department, but from the outside looking in, it almost looks like 2 independent organizations. You know, you have lifeguards doing this and firefighters doing that. Tell me a little bit about your leadership philosophy with regards to these 2 very different missions that are handled by this one agency.
Yeah, certainly. So we are one department with firefighters and ocean safety officers. However, we have the same mission, is to protect and serve and educate our community. We train together. We have similar leadership that, just like how I spoke of us and KSAR working together in KEMA daily. Our battalion chiefs, our deputy chief, we're interacting with the Ocean Safety Bureau chief, the captains and lieutenants from that bureau we're as one. So when we do have an emergency, our cooperation and assistance is seamless. You know, we operate off of the same radio frequency, so they're on the same radio. So each constantly know what the other is doing, and I believe the fit here is. I'll just use that same word: seamless. Ocean safety and fire.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. And just out of, for my own curiosity, do you personally have any water rescue or lifeguarding experience, or is this kind of a new world for you?
It is new for me, yeah. I don't have any formal training, aside from growing up in Southern California near the beach, so I got to spend a lot of the time in the water. But it is much different here. You know, I learned as an adult swimming here. It's just not the same. I have a tremendous amount of respect for our ocean safety officers, our firefighters that also go out in this ocean and save people. I have a tremendous amount of respect and envy for anybody that got to grow up here and to learn it. It's their own backyard and they know every nook and cranny. I am fortunate that I'm able to attend the training and to not only know how good they are, but how much our firefighters and ocean safety officers care about what they do, care about getting better, and they really care about making a difference for me, you, or any family.
All right. So aside from its natural beauty, I think one thing Kauai is really known for is its difficult terrain. You pretty much have mountains going right up to the beach in some places. How does the department prepare for firefighting or even search and rescue operations in this really challenging or difficult to reach areas?
It's through training and respect for what the conditions are. One of the most valuable assets that we have is our fire department helicopter that enables us to access remote locations that are hard to get to. I would say they're not impossible because the people that we're going to rescue had to get there somehow. But what it does is we're a small fire department in a sense. We do have 8 fire stations spread out across the island. We cover over 600 square miles of just land, which is not a lot of fire stations and not a lot of people. So when we have a 30 or 40 minute helicopter ride into somewhere to rescue somebody or just to make access, that saves 6 to 8 hours of walking on the ground, which can make a difference in somebody's life. And as important, because we have a limited amount of resources, we need those resources back in the fire station or in the lifeguard tower so that they can help serve somebody else. So a lot of training, but that comes with a lot of respect for the conditions, and our firefighters and ocean safety officers, which the ocean, I mean, we look at the rugged terrain on top of the water that we can see, and what I've had to learn over the 7 years that I've been here to picture in my mind is that's what it looks like under the water too. And because of that, the currents create these dangerous, unforgiving currents that we hear too often somebody loses their life to.
Yeah, you get these big waves and these rip tides and things like that, and people don't know what to do. Can you go into a little more detail? Like, tell us a little bit more about that training. What kinds of things do you guys do specifically, maybe?
So with the helicopter, they practice pick-off drills. So our helicopter, to talk a little more about it, it's small and agile. It's a single-engine helicopter, which means it cannot carry too much weight. You know, we can carry our pilot and 3 firefighters, and if we go to rescue somebody, the limitations that helicopter means, we have we don't have a hoisting system. So we have to, what we call is short haul. So a firefighter on a fixed line will have to go in, provide patient access, package the patient, and then that patient gets lifted by that single line to safety. Many times, because of the weight limitations of our helicopter, that rescuer is going to have to wait until the helicopter takes that patient to the ambulance or to a landing zone where a crew is waiting for them, and then we go back and get our rescuer. Which, if the weather changes or if it becomes dark, our helicopter cannot fly at night. That's another one of our limitations. So that rescuer sometimes has to stay the night at that location where they provided rescue. In the water, our crews, our firefighters, as well as ocean safety officers, practice skills with personal watercraft, otherwise known as a jet ski, but is a very valuable tool. In ocean safety, in addition to our 12 lifeguard towers, we have 3 roving jet ski patrols. And these patrols are able to carry or cover miles and miles of beach that just our 2 lifeguards on any one tower cannot. And so we practice very frequently of rescuing in the water as the conditions do change.
Yeah, and a jet ski is not an easy vessel to pilot unless you have a lot of experience with it. I know that. I knew that KFD's helicopter was pretty light, but I didn't realize it doesn't even have a hoisting system. That's I can't imagine trying to conduct a helicopter rescue without a hoist. So when you say you haul them up with a single line, is that just like block and tackle? Is there a motorized winch, or is there?
No, it's a fixed line.
So it's just
it's lift. The helicopter would lift them on that line and then to a location.
Oh, so you just down. Like sling load the patient all the way to the landing zone.
Yeah. So although it's not the state of the art equipment. But our guys are really, really good at using what we have with the limitations that we have.
You've got to be good to be able to do that. That's very impressive. Yeah. I would be, if I was that pilot, well, not that I know how to fly a helicopter, but if I was that pilot, I would be very nervous flying around with a injured person sling loaded under my aircraft. So I'm very impressed. So talking a little bit more about the helo, or I guess I should say the helicopter, so that we're not confused by helo on Hawaii Island. I know one of the most dangerous environments you can fly a helicopter in is close to a mountain that's close to water, which is our entire island. Wind must be a big concern, especially with a lightweight aircraft like that. How do you guys prepare for this really challenging aviation environment?
Well, we really depend on our pilots' knowledge. We have been fortunate to have the same pilots for quite a while now. The pilots do come in, wouldn't be able to quote the hours, but an extensive history of flight is required before they can become a pilot on Air One, which is the name of our helicopter. They continue to train as frequently as our crews do. So the fire department shift schedule, we're divided into 3. So there's 3 rescue crews that need training, constant training. So for every 3 times our fire crews are training, the helicopter gets 3. The helicopter pilot is training 3 times. So they're very proficient in what they do. We trust their knowledge, and they are very upfront with what their limitations are. So if the wind conditions are going to be too challenging or ineffective, so in wildfire situation, these high wind-driven fires that we're kind of talking about that overtake these communities, there's a point to where the helicopters cannot go in the air. And for us, I believe that's somewhere in the 35, 40 mile an hour range. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good that you have such experienced pilots. That's, I think, in an environment like this, one of the most important things is just knowing the airspace. I guess the same as knowing the ocean is very important for the lifeguards. So I know you guys use like tankers and pump trucks if you're responding to an area that doesn't have hydrants or fire main service. Tell me about that. What happens if you bring a tanker and that runs out of water? You just have to wait until the next tanker shows up, or? So we train for forecasting, right? So we understand that a continuous flow of resources needed. So at the outset of a brush fire or structure fire, that might be an area that has limited water supply. Although we currently only have 1 water tender, a water tender in comparison to a fire engine, a water tender carries 2,000 gallons of water. Our fire engines carry 750 gallons. So that's water tender takes care of 3 fire engines, so to speak. So if we're going to have an operations with extended time, the battalion chiefs will kind of forecast what's going to be needed. So if that water tender is going to run out of water in 20 minutes, we're going to reach out to our partners. So either multiple fire engines or
the County Public Works. They have played a major role in supporting us on many fires, not just brush fires, but residential fires, so we can rely on their water tenders. The state has some equipment they can let us use, and we also have our fire service partners at the airport. So Airport Rescue Firefighting Lihue, and then also PMRF has firefighters that we can rely on their equipment and their firefighters to help support us. So to answer the question is, they predict what they're going to need and they order those resources early. So then when that water tender runs out of water, there's someone else there to take its role. And then it can go back to the closest water source, refill, and then take its place back in line. And it's a continuous rotation. And we use the same concept with firefighting. So if we're at a brush fire or a structure fire that's taken a while, those same firefighters are going to get tired after a while. So the battalion chiefs or the incident commander's goal is to have reserve resources so they can rotate them. So those guys inside can eventually come out, change their air bottles, get a quick drink of water, and hopefully a little bit of rest before they go back and fight. But I will tell you, our resources are limited. Our firefighters, as well as our lifeguards, are athletes, and they train for what they do. They're in incredible physical shape, and it really pays off for us in the community when we have such tremendous, dedicated, and committed emergency responders.
Right. That sounds great. Yeah, it's nice to hear all our different government agencies working together. It's always good to see that. So the airport fire department, who runs that? Is that the state government or is that a private fire department?
Yeah, so the state runs the
Okay.
airport fire departments under the Department of Transportation. So they have their own fire chief, and each of the fire stations, the one here at Lihue has its own division or district chief as well.
Oh, okay, cool. So during maybe a non-fire related natural disaster like hurricanes, floods, what does the fire department's response look like in a situation like that, and how has past experience maybe shaped what our current approach is?
So starting with KEMA. With KEMA's history of all the previous events and the knowledge of what is needed to sustain an incident. So we will front load as best as we can, depending on what the warning is. If it's a weather warning, fire related, we will bring in our severity staffing. We'll have resources ready. The partners that join in KEMA are everything from Public Works. So we have Roads Department in there, Parks and Rec in case we need different facilities. KIUC, electric company is there to help work with us. They will kind of advise us what areas should be shut down or could be shut down. They'll give us advance notice so we can let our firefighters know in that area what to expect. Of course, we know a lot of our water systems are dependent on electricity for pumping stations, so we work really well hand in hand, working alongside our partners from the police department. It's everything we can do to be prepared in advance, because those relationships I talked about earlier, when somebody from KSAR shows up, we have that experience with them. We know what their skills and abilities are. And so we know who's capable of doing what and how to assign them when they get here.
So teamwork makes the dream work, you could say. It's good to hear. What are some common mistakes that our visitors to our island might make that could lead to dangerous situations? And how does the department maybe educate people that don't live here full time, so don't have access to or aren't looking at the normal materials that you provide? What do you do to educate those folks to keep them safe?
Yeah, so the two biggest mistakes are the common that come up to me are the hikers that were not prepared, not bringing enough water, or one, not knowing what their limitations are. And then secondly, visitors that get caught up in a current that they didn't know about or could have learned about. We work with the Visitors Bureau to try to get information out to people as early as we can, whether that be through brochures placed in their hotel room or where they check in, or at the car rental agencies, or at the airport. As well, at the airport, we do have a continuous running video in the baggage area with our ocean safety officer and Chief Kalani Vieira, and then along with Mayor Derek Kawakami, just to grab everybody's attention and to ask them to pay attention to what the ocean can do. And we have experts right there on the beach that they can ask for help, and that's what we hope they would do.
And just a little behind the scenes info. Actually, Hōʻike produced that video that's shown in the airport. Actually, I produced that video. So, and it's I'm glad. I hope that I'm glad that we were able to work together, and I hope that that's helped save some lives and prevent some mishaps. Every government agency, it seems like, or really just every employer, is facing challenges with recruitment and retention, and everybody's got their own strategy with how to try to overcome that hurdle. What is the fire department strategy for recruitment and retention looking like right now?
Well, I will tell you that the recruitment numbers have been dropping down year after year. There was a time not long ago where it would not be common to get at least 500 applications. Last couple of years, we've been in the 150, 160 applicant range. Unfortunately, out of that, only about half will show up to our written test, and then of that, about half passed. And when it comes down to hiring for several positions, we're down to just a dozen applicants or so. We wish that were a lot more. As far as retention, the Hawaii Firefighters Association, they negotiate their contract, and we want to support all of that. We know our firefighters do very dangerous work. We expect a lot of them. We put a lot on them mentally and physically. Physically, the firefighters endure, many firefighters endure PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorders. Firefighters have a higher rate of contracting cancer than somebody that's not a firefighter. And then the mental stress. Firefighters have a higher suicide rate than somebody that's not a firefighter. So you ask me, what are we doing to attract and retain? What I just said aren't the things, but we know those are concerns, and that could be affecting the number of people that apply. So we're trying to put more money into better firefighter physicals, which we have done. We're getting better a little bit every year. We're providing our firefighters with a more comprehensive physical to kind of look for early markers of cancer. We're putting a lot more time and effort into developing a peer support program to help with them mentally. Firefighters, I mentioned, have that higher suicide rate, high ideation rate of suicide, and we want to have an environment where they have not only somebody to talk to, but an avenue or a process to follow. So the upside again, the department provides an opportunity to be part of a great team. As I said, many of them are athletes. A lot of them are outdoor enthusiasts. They love adventure. And so they have that common bond on a team, like a football team, baseball team, canoe team. They all are paddling in the same direction. They all care about that same mission of serving somebody else other than themselves. And so that in itself can be worth more than a paycheck. We all need a paycheck, or I wouldn't have my coffee and these other fine things that are around us. But it's a blessing to be able to be paid for something that you really enjoy and love to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think public service is one of the most rewarding ways that you can make a living, I think. And especially if you're not really sure what you want to do for a career that helps other people will probably help you a lot too. So what are some key fire safety tips that you wish more people knew and practiced in their day-to-day lives?
So going back inside the home, cooking fires, not leaving something on the stove and forgetting about it. Whether it could be you fall asleep, you had a long day at work and you wanted to cook something and just, rest a little bit on the couch before food is ready. Unfortunately, that starts a lot of fires. New to us in this day and age are overcharging batteries. And I'm guilty of plugging in my iPhone and just leaving it on the charger forever. We're doing the same thing habitually with the weed eaters if you have a battery powered, or now the e-bikes. We find nationally and across the world and here locally that the longer people are leaving in these batteries to be charged, they overheat. And if there's a minor defect inside that battery, it'll cause it to overheat and it'll erupt in a fire that'll sustain itself. It's so hot from the inside where it's burning, it multiplies so fast that it can combust. And if it's in a room, a bedroom or a living room, it'll, just like if it was a cigarette and a couch, that was what we used to have many, many years ago. And now it's overcharging a battery. And so the recommendation is plug it in, charge it, but once it's fully charged, you need to take the battery out. Along with cooking fires, a lot of us don't want to stand there and wait, but it's a habit that we're going to have to start to develop, is not to leave our batteries charged and forget about them.
That's actually a really good tip, and that's something I didn't know. Actually, as we speak right now, in my tool shed at home, which is a wooden shed, by the way, there are 2 weed whacker batteries that are plugged in. So I know what I'm going to do first thing when I get home from this interview, and that's unplug those batteries. So thanks for the tip, Chief. You might be saving my life in addition to the lives
I hope
of
it helps
out there.
one person at least.
So we talked a little bit about budget and resources. What are some key improvements or advancements that you're hoping to implement in the fire department in the next few years?
It's going to be our infrastructure. It started several years ago with our fire apparatus. We have a lot of apparatus that's aged and in need of replacement. And there was a time that our budget was lean, and so apparatus couldn't be ordered for a few years. And since 2021, 22, we have been ordering replacement fire engines, replacement brush trucks. But the misfortune for us now is that we're on the tail end of the supply chain shortage issues. It is taking up to 4 years now to receive a fire engine from the date that we order it. So that's something that we would have been caught up by now had there not been a shortage. So we're planning for that future. We're planning our future fire engine orders based on the delays that we had now. Also with infrastructure, our fire stations, we're going to have to begin to renovate or reconstruct some of our older fire stations. We've begun that process with the Kauaʻi Fire Station. 2 years ago, we were awarded approval to renovate it. So last year, we met with an architect and engineering firm. So the plans are being drawn up for what the next Kauaʻi Fire Station will look like. It'll be on the same site that it is now. We're going to try to rebuild it in a way that we can still utilize the living quarters of the station while the next station is being built. So we don't have to displace that crew or be short without. After that fire station, we're going to have to go sequentially in the order that our stations were built. That was built in 1967. The next one is going to be across the street here. Hōʻike Fire Station was only built a couple years after that. So technology is another big piece, infrastructure, technology. We are in need of updating our station alerting. Over the years, we've relied on traditional communications. We have a dispatch center, and a call will come in and the dispatcher will alert the crew. Well, there's technology available now that as soon as the dispatcher answers that call and just gets a few key pieces of information, with a few keystrokes, the crew in the fire station can see that it's a cardiac arrest at Home Depot. And even before the dispatcher has the opportunity to get on the radio and start talking, our crews will be able to see and hear that information from a AI perspective, and which will save minutes on a response time, make a huge difference.
Yeah, saving minutes can save lives in a situation like that. Well, cool. It sounds like you've got a plan, and that's gosh, that's challenging. 4 years between ordering a truck and getting it.
It hurts.
I think we're very fortunate to have bright leadership at the helm of the department right now. You know, because I can't imagine trying to plan that far in the future with things that are aging as fast as our things are. So glad to have you here, Chief. Well, that's our show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Chief, thanks again for coming on today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Be sure to tune in next month when we'll interview another one of Kauaʻi's professional heroes. Until then, stay safe out there. Aloha.